180, center.
Inside the Weston's Grand Ballroom here on the second floor of the Weston in Uptown Charlotte. We now welcome Boston College and the Eagles to the room. Coach Jeff Hafley will take the stage. He'll take the podium for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes with each of his student athletes. As we have done throughout the last 2 days, and we thank you for your participation, please identify yourselves as well as the agency that you are working with, and we'll make sure that Coach and our students know exactly who you are, and there we go. Our first question from the room will come to our right coach, about the 6th row back, right towards the edge there. Walking the microphone there as we go.
Sorry, I had to take this off. You guys made this for very tall people.
Coach, Jesse Koger with PlantTheSpear.com. They always say games are won and lost in the trenches. Last year, obviously, you guys had some struggles up front, brought in only 4 starts to the season. This year, you bring in 137 starts as a unit. You also bring back all conference Christian Mahogany there. How do you feel that kind of is really going to, you got experience for a lot of the young guys last year. How do you feel that's going to pay dividends going forward this year? As a lot of people have said, Boston College should have the most improved offensive line in college football.
First of all, I love your question. I love your numbers, and I agree with your statement. That guy brings a big smile to my face right now, and he should bring a big smile to our entire team. You know, last year in May, we found out he got injured, and I still felt pretty good about the line. We only had 4, like you said, we had 4 starts on the whole offensive line, and my biggest concern was anybody going to get hurt? Well, then week 2, we lose our starting right tackle to a torn ACL. Our center tears his meniscus and breaks his left hand, and our left guard tears his labrum. So now we're taking guys on defense and we're moving them to offense, which I have a ton of respect for those guys. I mean, we had guys step up, and it was hard. I mean, Jackson Ness played guard and played center. He hadn't played center in high school, and he started against Wake Forest at center. I mean, Dwayne Alec was a defensive lineman. He started every game at guard. Jack Conley, Ozzie Trapillo. I mean, those guys battled all year. And now, a year later, we have 137 starts versus 4. At BC, you got to run the ball. And we're going to run the ball. And the key to our team and the strength of our team needs to be the O-line, and it will be the O-line, and it's led by that guy right there. And he brings a nastiness and a toughness. And then you have guys like Drew Kendall, who was a freshman All-American as a center, who was tough enough to play with a torn meniscus, and he's back. Ozzie Trapillo, a tackle. Jack Conley, who I already mentioned. We brought in 2 transfers, Logan Taylor, who started at Virginia at left tackle, and Kyle Hergel, who is one of the strongest offensive linemen and one of the tougher kids that I've seen. And now there's competition. Now all those guys who got experience last year and went through it hard, they're competing for jobs. A lot of the guys who were in the 2 deep were our starters last year. That's how it has to be here. And that's what excites me the most about this team is the offensive line. Now we got to go prove it, and we got to go line up in training camp, and now we're going to be able to practice and be physical, which we weren't able to do. So as hard as it was last year, I'm really excited and optimistic about the return of Christian along with the rest of our offensive line.
Coach to the right side, 4th row.
Kenton Gibbs with Locked On ACC. Coach, you talked about the return of the offensive linemen and the return of Christian and a lot of that. However, for the players who could tally statistics, you're returning 80% of that production as well. I know that last year was a very down year where you saw a ton of injuries and whatnot, but is a silver lining and a reason for optimism in Boston College fans not how much you're bringing back from that team, even though they did struggle mightily?
Yeah, I mean, look at the production you just said. We returned more production, I think, than most teams in the ACC and maybe in the country. At the end of the year, 37 out of the 44 in our 2 deep were first and second year players. Were some ready to play? Maybe not. Some were thrown into the fire as true freshmen, and they got a little taste of it. And they went through some really hard times, and then all of a sudden you get a team that's 28-point underdogs that goes into Raleigh, is 28-point underdogs. No one thinks we can win the game. We go down, I think, 14 within the first 3 minutes, and Emmett rallies us back and throws a touchdown to another freshman in Joe Griffin, and we win the game that no one thought we could win. So you can ask these guys. There's excitement, and there's energy, and our guys are getting older, and that's how we have to win at BC. Most of our guys are still underclassmen. We got a lot of juniors, and we got some seniors. We brought in some transfers. But the attitude, the effort, I think it's contagious. No, we're not going to sit up here and talk about how good we're going to be. We got to go and play. And we got to go to training camp next week, and it's probably as excited as I've been since I've been a head coach to get into a training camp. But we got to go prove it, and we got to get better. But I really like this team. I like the players, and I think they're just as excited as I am.
Coach, to your left, right there in the front row.
Coach Dan Tortora, wakeupcalldt.com. Some people focus on the problem, some focus on the solution. Like you said, you're not going to say how good you're going to be because you have to play those games. But when we see you during the season, we're seeing a piece of that iceberg. We're not seeing the majority of it, of all the work that goes in. So culture-wise and building-wise, what do you get excited about at Boston College, about what you're doing so that tip of the iceberg is going to look like something positive at the end of the year?
Yeah, I think last year we sat up here and we talked about Zay Flowers, and Zay could have left. And then you talk about Zay Flowers, who was the 22nd pick in the draft. At the end of the season, when we're a 3-win team, that guy's playing harder for his teammates than a lot of people. There's a lot of guys that would have opted out, not played in that game. I mean, there's more examples. I mean, you look at Donovan. Donovan, a true sophomore, led the ACC in sacks, right? So what do you think happened this offseason? He got called. He got called by schools, he got messaged by schools, and he got offered a lot of money. We won 3 games, but we didn't lose our good young players, right? Same thing with Christian. Christian could have went to the NFL. I'm sure Christian could have went to any team in the country, but he already said it. He wasn't leaving. Our guys believe in what we're doing. More importantly, our guys believe in each other, and they believe in the coaching staff. This thing I knew would take some time to build, and I think you're going to see some of those pieces like you talked about as we get going. And that's why I'm really excited, because I love these guys on this team. I love the players on the team, and it makes it a lot of fun to coach them.
Stay on the left there, Coach. 4th row.
Justin Jones, CarolinaGridiron.com. You start off with 3 straight home games to start, and then 4 out of the first 5. How important is it to get across to your team about starting strong with having that many home games to start the season?
Yeah, you got to take advantage of that. You got to start fast. You got to use home field advantage. The beauty of it, too, the first 3 are at noon, so there's consistency, right? There's time to recover. There's time for these guys after the game to go be with their families, but you're home. You're not traveling. So to have that opportunity to start home the first 3 and have as many home games as we do, we need to take advantage of it. We have an unbelievable student section, and we've had an unbelievable fan base this last couple years, and I'm excited that we get to start fast in front of them.
Coach, from the podium, speaking of transition, you've got some coaching changes. You've elevated Coach Shimko to offensive coordinator. Coach Chazinski is rejoining the team, and then you've also got co-defensive coordinators in Coach Abdul Rahim and Coach Dugan. What is it about what you're trying to put into place plays through those coaches, and what's your strategy in all of these coaching additions and changes?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we got the staff right. I'm really excited about Coach Chud. Coach Chud's got an incredible reputation in the National Football League as a play caller, offensive coordinator, head coach. He's been a big part of just the game management and helping me set some things up, and a big mentor to me. The fact to kind of bring him on full-time, the development of the scheme and the players, is probably as excited as I've been. And I think if you ask these guys, especially Emmett and Christian, I think they'll reiterate that. I think the combination of him and Steve Shimko, who's worked with our quarterbacks, and who I've been around now for 3 years, very smart, processes at a high level. I think they really complement each other well and work together very well. They've had a prior relationship, so I'm really excited about that. Defensively, obviously, that's my background, so our defensive scheme is not going to change very much. Sean Duggan was with me at Ohio State, another really sharp, up-and-coming young coach, and Coach Azar, incredible relationship with our players. Him in front of the room is really impressive, very knowledgeable. And then I got a chance to bring in Paul Rhodes. Paul was one of my biggest mentors. He helped me get started in football. He was the defensive coordinator at Pitt when I was hired to be. He hired me to be his GA, young guy, 25 years old. Then I was hired full-time to be the secondary coach. Kept in touch with him. Probably the guy I've looked up to most as a defensive back coach, young defensive back coach, and defensive coach in general. So to have the opportunity to bring him on, it was huge for me. Not only as a great defensive coach, but an ex-head coach, being the ex-head coach at Iowa State. So now I got, 2 ex-head coaches on the staff, which I think is huge. More importantly, I think these guys see it, and they're excited to play for them, which is huge.
On the right side, Coach, about the 6th row towards the right.
Hey, Jeff. Greg Mediv from the Charlottesville Daily Progress. I'm just wondering and you touched on it a little bit, how has Logan Taylor fit in since joining you guys? How has the transition been for him?
Love him. He's really changed and developed his body. Obviously, he's gotten a little older. He's got 3 years left. Tough, tenacious, practices really hard, knowledgeable. He's going to have a chance to be a really, really good football player. I think Emmett's probably pretty excited to have him protecting him. I know they have a prior relationship, playing in, I believe, a year together, but really happy that he's here to come in and compete and help us win games. So I appreciate the question.
Stay on the same row, Coach, just a slight back to your left.
Hey, Coach. Jesse Coger with Plant and Spear again. So obviously you have some big shoes to fill with Zay Flowers, but can you talk about bringing in UCF transfer Ryan O'Keefe, someone who has 2,000 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns throughout his career? He has experience. What he brings to the pass game with having to replace Zay Flowers, and then if I may follow up with, you said you wanted to get back to running, which is the identity of Boston College football. How also is it important to bring back a running back like Phil Garwo, who has been a 1,000-yard rusher in the past? Yeah,
having Pat Garwo back it's big time. Pat and I had a lot of conversations in the offseason. There were some people calling him, and there might have been thoughts with him. I just went through a really tough year after just rushing for 1,000 yards, and then last year was last year, and it was hard for him. I think it would have been hard for everybody, right? But he came back in the spring, and I think he liked what he saw up front, and he came to me and said he was going to stay. But that's a guy that I don't think he's talked about enough in the ACC, to be honest with you. He's just as deserving, in my opinion, to be sitting up here today. The guy had 1,000 yards 2 years ago. In all due respect, I think he's got a chance to do it again. So I'm really grateful you asked the question and brought him up, because he should probably be up here with us as well. Ryan O'Keefe, I think Coach Wyatt, who is our wide receiver coach and pass game coordinator, does as good of a job as any wide receiver coach I've been around. What he did with Zay this last year was incredible, really, and I mean that. And I think our wide receivers would tell you the same thing. I don't want to compare anyone to Zay. Zay was special, and until someone proves it, I'm not going to make those comparisons. Ryan can fly. Ryan's the fastest player on our team. He might be one of the fastest players in the ACC. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, like you said. Love the way he practices. Love the way he fits in with these guys. Gives us a guy back in the kick return game that can take one to the house, which we really haven't had in a long time. Can catch a screen and take it the distance like we've all seen if we've watched him on the tape. And he can make those contested catches down the field. And I think what he'll get with Coach Wyatt is, I think he'll be able to develop, like Zay, into a complete wideout. So I'm really glad he's here with us.
Anything else for Coach? Coach, if you want to hand the microphone off to Donovan.
All right, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you.